thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we get to do this.
Me too.
Yeah, like I love all of your work. I love obviously your TikTok. I'm always like, yes, girl, you know. And we've been connected for quite some time, like through when I did Haute Couture, like for a while. I feel like maybe almost a decade or something like that, like a pretty long time.
Least. Yeah, I think it had to be even more than a decade ago, because I don't think my kids were just born, maybe like 10, 11 years ago. Because I remember reaching out to you when I found your Instagram, because I wanted to wear some pieces to go talk about shadow work on a show, and I needed something kind of like bold. And
Yeah.
I found you that way.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, that was a whole other lifetime ago. I'm so glad that we stayed connected through all of that too.
Me too.
Yeah. So as we were just like chatting a little bit, you know, I had this call to do a podcast for a long time, but really didn't feel like it fit into like any particular niche. I do love chatting with people though. Like I love hearing people's stories. It's really, I wanted to talk to people who live unconventional lives, who live truly to their own beat of their own drum. And maybe it looks a little odd to other people, but I think that we need that more. And I think that we need more models of people who are living that life without it needing to be like the most sensational thing, but like a good life that has meaning, that's very fulfilling, that takes care of your corner of the world. Like, I think that there's a space for that in, at least from what I see. Maybe it's just my algorithm, but a lot of it's like, you know, be the biggest, whatever. And I'm like, not everyone, there's many layers, right? It could be the biggest, and it could just be something a little bit more intimate as your life experience. And so kind of all ranges in between. Wanting to share that with people, because I don't think that that's something that everybody gets. And I do feel, you know, that was something that I was grateful enough to have exposure to, and all the random things I've done in my life is to meet a lot of people with a lot of different life paths that showed me that maybe I could look at things a little differently. So that's kind of the impetus.
That just made me think of my husband's grandmother. She was just one of those like South Philly Italian women. She was like the mayor. Everybody knew who she was. And she used to say something all the time. It was, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the loudest voices are the ones that are heard all the time. So when you're in school and teachers are telling you, these are the careers you can have, it's like first responder, teacher, lawyer, doctor, and president. And like, that's all you got. You're choosing from one of those five, but that's not life. It's not like that at all. And that perpetuates in every area, where it's whoever the loudest voice is, whoever's the person who's making the most ruckus is the one who gets the attention. But I like this flip where it's like there's a quiet way to move through. And I think we're having this kind of soft girl era anyway, to move into spaces where it's like, do what you want. And that's a perfect way to live life too. And it doesn't have to be over the top. It can just be whatever feels good.
I totally agree. I actually just got a little snail tattoo to remind myself of this.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah, the snail this year, I did actually, I think it was my second episode. And as somebody who did not do that, was not raised that way. I mean, I've been raised to like, you know, my mom went to medical school when I was 2, which is crazy. And she had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And she was just like, she is, you know, a force. And she's actually retired now. And it's fun. It's fun seeing her like embrace her like soft girl era now that she's retired. Yeah. But yeah, it was for me having an understanding and talking about, as we'll talk about with the shadow work, like that there's another way. I don't really, honestly, I'm not really sure how to do it yet. Still, I'm learning. But it's just been what, you know, has called so much, where it's like knowing, and I talk a lot about like elements, like knowing when to flow, and like knowing, you know, when water will destroy whatever it's in its path. And then also it'll flow around whatever in its path, like kind of depending on what you need. So I love that we are, as a culture, at least some of us, embracing something that is a slower pace, but intentionally slower, right? Like not, again, like I think our culture kind of goes like, well, be slow or be fast. And it's like, we're all of these things, you know.
We're cyclical. We're whatever we feel like being whenever we feel like being it, if we let it happen.
Right. Yeah. So let me like properly introduce you to everybody. We're just chatting away.
I feel like this is just going to be how our conversation goes. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know you from your shadow work, especially, and your therapy. So can you just tell everybody a little bit about how you got to this place and like what you're working on right now?
Totally. So, hey guys, I'm Danielle Massi. I was a licensed psychotherapist by trade. I did that for over a decade. A cancer diagnosis made me kind of change my entire life path. And I was teaching shadow work at Penn State before that and teaching it to my clients through therapy. And I had never done it myself. Had my first session, fell in love with it, studied it, found a mentor, learned everything I could about it. And now I write books and oracle decks on the subject of shadow work and a handful of other things, wherever the wind takes me. And I guess that's kind of where my non-traditional piece comes in, is if you ask me what I'm doing at any given point, it's like, I'm hosting a conference, I'm walking a runway, I'm doing this. And I don't ask to do things. It's like, hey, you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, why not? I've never done that before. Let's do that thing. And that's kind of how I live my life.
I love that. That is very much how I live my life too. Yeah. It's like, I've always been very shy and honestly just like afraid to do all the things, but I've made a commitment to myself somewhere to say yes to most things, which has led me to some very interesting like experiences where I'm like, this is not really on my brand, but whatever. Like it's very outside.
But we're human, right?
Exactly.
And not everything has to be on brand. This is something I've been thinking about a ton lately because I get a lot of pressure because I do have a big brand now to do things that are on brand. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I want to do stuff that's like radically off brand just because it's fun and I've never tried it before. So trying to figure out how to make that my brand.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's exactly why I did this with the no niche, and also just kind of started, when I first started this, I'm like slowly adding in little pieces, but I'm a huge advocate for people to, just go in the direction of the thing that's calling your heart. And of course, there are going to be things that come up and you don't want to just do it without thinking about it. You want to have intentionality behind it, but there doesn't need to be this like perfect. I've seen perfection crush people around me and try to crush me. And it's something that, again, just begin where you can begin and be present with it. And granted, this is a lot more for creative space. Like I think I was talking about like done is better than perfect or something like that in one of my episodes, which is a big thing for me. And then I was like, but if you're like a surgeon, you should probably be really,
in that case, right. We really want perfect.
We really want you to be, ready.
But that's a different personality type. They might not be the ones listening to this anyway. And I think the people who are called to be here, it might be a message for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. With your cancer diagnosis, I never really got to ask you about that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how that got you into shadow work and what that experience?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I'm sorry if this is redundant for anybody who's read my book, because I do talk about it. I'll give like the shortest version. Basically, I was diagnosed. It was the week of my 30th birthday. So happy birthday. And I had like a regular doctor's appointment, OBGYN. I was going to see her after, I had my son. My daughter's a little bit older, regular checkup after he was born. And she was like, everything's fine. See you later. And then I got a call a week later and she was like, something came back not so fine, but it's probably nothing. But just come back and let's take some biopsies, which are super painful, by the way. Nobody tells you how awful they are. And they had to take a lot of them. Ooh. So we did that. And then she said, we're just going to hang around and wait. So that was like right before my birthday, where I could just feel like the impending doom of like something is bad. Like you don't take that many biopsies on somebody when nothing is wrong and you're probably like nothing's wrong. And like 2 days after my birthday, I got the call that I had cervical cancer. And it was just like the beginning of a whirlwind, because when you're diagnosed, it doesn't matter what kind of cancer it is, you sit in limbo for a while, where it's like you're going to start having a bunch of doctor's appointments. They're all going to be talking behind the scenes without you involved, because nobody wants to scare you. They don't want to make you feel like you're about to die if you're not about to die. So it's a lot of conversations that you're not privy to while you just sit and wait. And I spiraled during that because I'm a true and blue Capricorn stellium. I need the facts. I need to know where we're at. I don't like being left out of conversations. It like freaked me out. I spiraled like crazy and went into like a pretty dark place during it. And when I was in that dark place, I could not, like, I was not coping. There's nothing you could do to pull me out of that well. The only thing that I did during that, which I pulled from all of my healing work beforehand, was like let myself feel the fullest extent of all the feelings. Like I had to grieve everything that I was before that point. And when I came out of it, I said to myself, I'm going to figure out how to never let myself feel that bad again. Because you can feel your feels, but it shouldn't have gotten that low. I shouldn't have been in like that dark of a space during it. And during that time, I remember meditating and shadow work just kept coming up. I was like, yeah, I teach about that. And at Penn State, I literally teach about shadow work. There's a whole lesson I do about Carl Jung. We go into all the pieces of it. And I'm like, whatever. And I just brush it off. But it kept coming up on the meditation pillow until finally I was like, F it, let's do it. And I found someone to guide me through my first shadow work session. And I was hooked. That was it for me. And I never looked back.
Wow. And then cancer diagnosis, everything was okay after that? Or
I had to go through a bunch of surgeries and they caught it early, thank goodness. So I was really lucky on that front, but it still was a ton of surgeries, a lot of physical pain. Hysterectomy was like the final one. So it was like grieving the loss of what I felt like womanhood was supposed to be, especially someone who was like so in her feminine with Kundalini yoga and all that stuff. And it sucked, but I'm okay. And I've been okay ever since. And I think it's been like 6 or 7 years now since I completed all my cancer treatments. And knock on all the wood, I think we're out of the woods at this point.
That is wonderful. That is so wonderful. And that must have been incredibly, incredibly tough. Like I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was one of those things that like a dark night of the soul on steroids where I'd tell everyone I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, but I am so glad that it happened to me, because if it didn't, I'd still be sitting in my therapy office in Philly, seeing clients that as much as I love them, I didn't love that work. It never felt like it was enough. So it was the catalyst I needed to get me out of there and to do something that I otherwise never would have tried.
And do you feel like that's something that is pretty universal? Like, do you feel that, let's say, like, we all have something, right, that shakes our world in that sense, and varying degrees of those things. Do you feel that if you start to, this is totally me trying to like manage the universe, right? Like, well, if I do, if I'm really good about my shadow work, and really present, then the shaking up doesn't always have to be so aggressive, right?
Yes, I do believe that. And I believe that to be true for a lot of reasons, but one of them is backed in science. I went to school for cognitive neuroscience and psychology. And as we talked about the brain during those courses, one of the things that came up a lot is that people do not want to change. And we are so hell-bent against change. And it's because of the brain. The brain likes running us at our status quo. It likes keeping us in the same place as much as possible, because if we do predictable things, we get predictable outcomes. And when we do things that are outside of the brain's comfort zone, there's no roadmap for what that's going to look like and the impact it will have on our entire neurological system. So the brain sends out warning signs, trying to get us to move away from the scary unknown things. And when we have those intuitive hits to do something bigger, to try something unconventional, the brain is not considering whether or not it's better for you. The brain is considering whether or not there is a known pathway. So when you've done shadow work or neurological work of any kind, whether it's like the somatic stuff, if it's Kundalini, if it's a ton of Reiki, if it's all your journaling, whatever it is, when the brain sends out those warning signs, you've done enough work on yourself to have the warning sign come in at a lesser degree, where it feels like it's like kind of giving you a scolding, but it's not screaming at you. And you can talk back to yourself and kind of go, I hear you, but I'm going to do this anyway. So yeah, I think all these healing modalities can help with that massively. Mm-hmm. And I think the generation of people who are coming up now are going to have a much easier time with that, because I feel like millennials are so traumatized. There's so much that's happened. So many dark nights of the soul, so many horrible things that we actually are almost too comfortable with trauma, and we're used to it.
Yes, girl. Oh my God. Yes. I mean, that's especially coming from you and all your expertise. It's really nice to hear you say that. It's very like validating. And I'm sure people listen and you're like, you know what? Thanks. I really just needed that to be acknowledged. I think and I think societally speaking, everybody, you know, we see so much happening right now. And yeah, it's like everybody is really going through it. And it's kind of unspoken in a lot of ways. And we're all just like putting out little social media things like,
are you guys good?
Yeah. How's everyone?
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, the amount, like personally, the amount of growth from, you know, all the things that I've experienced in my life and having chronic health issues and stuff like that, that really shifted my life path as well. And then all of the world. But like you said, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm somebody that I'm proud of and somebody that I can trust myself to show up for myself even when things get really tough. And that wasn't something that I started with. And I think that's the invitation, right? You know, is to go through something and, you know, I've seen many times people will fold and that's it. Or they go through a thing and they rise. And granted, we have those options. They keep coming up. We have those opportunities to fold and rise over and over and over again. But I find when we take the constructs of life out and just go to like the meaning of life, I really love Viktor Frankl so much. And when I was going through like the hardest times, and granted, I was for sure using some of this just to cope with things I shouldn't be coping with. However, it did teach me a way of thinking that also helped me to find joy and presence in my life. And really it was, if nothing changes, right? Like if I can't change anything about my circumstances, this is before my relationship now, but my, you know, relationship, my home, my life, my everything, whatever, my health, everything, you know, how can I find meaning and happiness and some joy in this? How can I find that, you know, because there is a way to find it. It's not going to look what I like what I thought it would look like. But it really shifted me so much to be able to walk through times in my life that I didn't feel like walking through, you know, that I just felt like crumbling, and just kept that sentiment in mind. Like, how do I find my peace here? In some way, it might be chaos all around me, but is there some way I can find just a little bit of peace, which is one of the reasons I walk in nature all the time. That's my church. So, you know,
so grounding. Yeah. We just said before this, when you and I were talking before we began about how our religion is hugging trees, there's a truth to that because it's so grounding. Mm-hmm. I think when we look back at old philosophers and the people who came before us, the sentiments that existed then are still existing now. And we might change the wording around so much of this, but when we're present with ourselves and when we can find gratitude in the day to day, and we're not worried about what's to come, and we're not harping on the stuff that's in the past, we feel better. And there is a neurological component to that. When we're focused on the future, that's anxiety. And that's the brain trying to figure out all the different outcomes that could emerge for you. And 99% of them will not come to pass. But if your brain feels like it can sit in each one of those moments for a little while, it becomes predictable and known. So it's calming for the nervous system, theoretically, but not in actuality. And the rumination on the past is replaying all the old things. It's like a cycle or a loop that keeps going on repeatedly. And you get stuck in the past and it feels like you can't move forward. And most of us, not everybody, and hopefully not you and I, but sometimes we go into those spaces more readily. Mm-hmm. And when you can just be here, listening to this, hearing the sound of our voices, feeling yourself in a chair or on a walk, or if you're going for a walk in nature in the mornings and listening to bird song and hearing, animals scurry about, feeling the wind on your face, it makes a difference because it just puts you here. And that is the most calming place for your neurology, for your body, for your energy as a whole. If you could just be present for a little while every day, gratitude makes that so much easier. Your life will be better without having to change anything else.
So beautiful and so true. And I think I know for me, I'll say that it was I felt that I wasn't doing it right. Like, I think that's a common thing. Like, I don't feel like I'm being present correctly a lot. So, or like, I didn't give it long enough today. I felt a moment of it. And the way that I think that I talk to myself, at least, is that I try to just remind myself that, like, even a few of those, like, just even if it's a moment, that moment really is, when we talk about time isn't real, right? That's when I think of that, right? If I find that moment where I'm able just to like get present for even just a fraction of a second, it really shifts everything. And it makes everything else feel like more, there's context for things in a different way. It puts things in perspective. And I know for me, I'm the kind of person who by default would look at things way too close. And this is why I love like animal totems. So I would say I would have mouse vision and I would be like on the ground of the earth. I'm looking at everything so detailed and forgetting that there's a bigger picture. And so that's why I love the birds of prey and the birds in general. They remind me to look at things from farther away and really get that expanded vision. And that really, even if that's just a second, and hopefully I, try to get there a couple times, but it's enough. I feel like, and would you agree with that?
Yeah. And this is funny that we're having this conversation because I'm actually in the process of writing another book. Ooh. And I know it's not the right time to do anything because it's Mercury retrograde, but I love a challenge. Yes. And my agent was like, give me some chapters yesterday. So I've been writing furiously for like the past week. And yesterday I kind of finished up my chapter 1 and I have a whole section in it about how sometimes we as people are looking at things too close up, kind of like looking at a painting, but your nose is up against it. Yep. And it's when you get a bird's eye view, when you can stand back from it, you can see the entire painting that you go, oh, duh, there it is. And it makes total sense.
Yes. I love that so much. Beautiful synchronicities.
Beautiful.
I love it. I guess we probably should just explain like what shadow work is. And I'm curious what part of it called to you, like what kept coming up in terms of calling to you and like how you saw that transform things in your life and then just shadow work in general.
Yeah. For anybody who's heard about shadow work before, I want to just clear up what it is from like its oldest roots that we can find evidence of. And even beyond that, that way it makes sense going forward. So in the late 1800s, early 1900s, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud were like the fathers of psychotherapy. And Sigmund Freud was Carl Jung's mentor, and he was trying to coax Jung into doing all the things that he was doing and get him to think the same way. Because at that time, there wasn't research. Nobody was like, let's study this and see how this empirical data can tell us. They were like, I have a great idea, and I'm going to try it on 50 unwilling people. And we're just going to see how it goes. And if it works, I'm going to write a paper about it. Everybody's going to love it. And that was how psychotherapy really began. And as crazy as that sounds and how lacking in empirical data it was, there was some stuff that came out of that time that was spot on. So we all know about Freud and his work with, the ego. We talk about the ego all the time in the spiritual community. And we talk about the conscious mind, the subconscious, which is the stuff that's just below the surface, and the unconscious, which is the stuff that is super buried and hidden away from you. When Carl Jung came onto the scene to work with Freud, that was all done. Freud had already decided on all those things, and he was writing papers and starting his own school of thought. Carl Jung took some of his ideas and was like, I can do more with this. I can make a name for myself. And he started looking into the unconscious mind. So he would work with his patients and try to regress them to the point, like sort of like in a deep, deep meditative state, to get them to remember things that they hadn't remembered before. So he was doing that, and he called the unconscious mind the shadow. That was his rebrand so that he could slap his name on something. Nice. And then shadow work was the process of doing that deep meditative work to get them to remember things they'd forgotten. And during those sessions, things would come up that clients were like, I don't remember that ever happening to me. And then they'd talk to their older siblings or their mom and dad and siblings were like, you don't remember like drowning in the lake and like so-and-so got you out of there? Yeah, that absolutely happened. Wow. So he was getting enough feedback from people that it was like, oh my God, I fact checked this and this is legit, that he started running with these concepts. So now in 2025, the psychotherapy community has rebranded shadow work again, and they've called it something else, but they're actually doing research around it. There's a section of psychotherapy called internal family systems. Sounds super friendly.
Yeah.
And there's a piece of it called parts work, and parts work is shadow work. And during that, what they're doing is they're regressing people to the point where they can bring up those repressed memories through theta brainwave state and watch as we break down the system within your mind, because we can break down old neural pathways, which is like the ways you see the world. And when it's done in that capacity, your eyes are open. And what the therapist is looking for is to see your eyes start to vibrate. Because when they do that, it actually means an old neural pathway in the brain is breaking down. So they're looking for this. I know.
That gives me
wild.
chills. That's crazy. That's so.
So now we have the research to back up this super old thing. So now that I got that out of the way, in TikTok and all these other places, everybody's talking about shadow work, and they're rebranding it and making it kind of cutesy and easy for everybody to do, because shadow work is scary and we can make it friendly and something that feels approachable. And they're calling it journaling and like mirror work and reflections. And yeah, all those things are awesome. And they're like precursors to getting into shadow work. But by definition, shadow work is being in that deep meditative state so that you can access unconscious memories when you're in theta. And when you open the door to those and you bring them into the conscious mind, you work to change how your body remembers them. Because our body, if anybody's read The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, our body keeps a score. Your body literally remembers the trauma. So when you remember drowning in a lake at 2 years old and someone coming in and saving you, you might start shivering. You might have your heart racing out of your chest. You might find you have sweaty palms. You might start to have brain fog. So when we bring the memory up, we want to calm the body down. So we change the way you're breathing. We change the way you're thinking about it. We remind you that you are totally safe and everything is fine. That is shadow work.
Okay. I love this explanation. Thank you. So I'll give you, let's see. So when Haute Couture was like, I was like, all right, it's a wrap.
Which I'm so sad about, by the way, because I need more crystal jewelry in my life. And everybody still, I wear them all the time, and everyone's like, "Where did you get them?"
Oh, I see them.
Can't have it.
It makes me so happy when I see you wearing them. I'm like, okay, they're being loved. They're out in the world.
Still my favorite.
Thank you. It was definitely something. I didn't mean it to be my like main focus is really what it was. I'm a musician, and I never devoted myself to myself, really. And I knew that when Haute Couture was struggling, like it got us here to Colorado. We were able to like get here, and I was like, word, things were doing well. And then the economy, whatever. And then honestly, Instagram just being the way it's been, because that was our biggest source of traffic. And like
the algorithm fucked us all.
Yeah. And I made the mistake. I didn't really, it's not a mistake, whatever. I'm happy I said it, but about things going on in the world. And I was like, fuck on Haute Couture. And then somebody reported my account being like, this is terrible, whatever. And I'm like, are you not outraged? But whatever. So after that, and I was like, you know what, though? I'm glad I said how I feel. Now, do I continue to do it I don't actually really say much of anything anymore on Instagram, but, it's just kind of, I'd rather not argue with people. I'd rather just do the things that I know how to do in the world.
Yeah.
Anyways, all that being said, it was fading, and I knew that it was my opportunity to either really like commit to what's in my heart, which I've been a musician forever. So I've been a professional musician forever, but I wasn't really honoring myself about it with my time and my energy and my focus. It was kind of like, let me get everything else done first, and then I will focus on myself, which meaning music is like, we're just together. And then I also had this very like, it like hit me like a ton of bricks that it was something I've always known, which is one of the reasons that I've really tried to really tried to commit to just being present spiritually and understanding, why I think the way I do and why blah, 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 having lived with depression and anxiety all of my life. I realized that like, no matter how much money, like how financially secure, because it's been a thing, having your own business is wild west of that.
Yeah.
And, I would imagine like, okay, everything's like totally secure and everything's good and grounded. And when I imagined it, I still felt uneasy. And I knew if I didn't address that, no matter where I got, didn't matter what kind of imagination, I would loop myself back to the beginning. And I was like, I need to deal with that. I need to deal with that. And the resources that I had at the time, there is a course for these girls, and they do it's To Be Magnetic, and I like their work. I think they are doing a lot of good. So I would do like their meditations and they have like the binaural beats and everything. And basically it wasn't last year, it was the year before, basically spent that entire year just like meditating, journaling, just like unpeeling. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't remember this and I didn't remember that. And this is how I felt, growing up. And I still feel that way. And this is how I felt about this scenario. And it was definitely very, very revealing. And I will say, I think that as much as that is really wonderful, and I think that they're doing a good job at getting a lot of people aware to this concept, that working with somebody like you, who can really guide that process, seems to make a lot more sense at a certain point, because it's still unclear to me, like if I'm remembering something, like growing up, I felt very invisible. I felt very, I was very shy, and I'm in a family that is very theatrical and loud. And yet I loved singing and music and stuff, but I felt very, very like I wasn't doing it the way that it was wanted in my theatrical kind of family. So like I wasn't fitting into that. And I was very private about those things, but I have, I'm a songwriter, like I'm a folk singer at heart, so like I really wanted to express those things. And just specifically in terms of being seen, it was like that theme. And even though like it was still unclear to me how to rewrite some of those things on your own. And it's daunting to go like, well, what if I run into some kind of memory that is not something I'm prepared to deal with on my own? Which I'm sure that there are some that I'm concerned about that, I know, like, I'm like, I don't want to do that by myself. If that pops up, then I need to take the week off and talk to somebody about that, So I find it interesting in that sense, how you're saying like the difference, like you said, like with the eye movement and just the taking it from like the introduction to let's go back and let's look at why we think, what are the programs that are running this truly? Like why do you think this? Who taught you to think this way? What taught you to think this way? And then how to actually like rewrite that process. And I'm curious how you go about it with clients, like what that particular portion of the shadow work looks like.
Yeah, I think a huge part of this is understanding what's happening within the brain, because most of us don't know what we're doing. And we sign up for courses, we work with healers and other stuff, and you leave and you're like, I feel better, but I don't necessarily know what happened to me or like how I got here or like what to do if this ever comes up again. So the mini lesson here, putting my professor hat on, is that our brains, from before we're even out of the womb, are taking in information in order to build a really complex highway system. There's 4 pieces of how a memory develops. The first is the sensory stuff. So everything that you can smell, hear, taste, touch, see, all that information is coming in through your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your fingers, like all this information is coming in, and the brain is collecting the sensory input. Once the brain is the sensory input, it needs to send a message. So it creates a chemical response called an emotion. And that emotion is a messenger that will carry the message down your spinal cord, down the brain stem to the body. And it'll tell your body what to do. So if you experience something that's sensory, that's like when you're walking in the wintertime in the Northeast and you smell like logs on the fire and like pine and all that stuff, you're taking in the sensory stuff. Maybe it's dark outside and all that information is coming in and it's telling the brain, feel something. The emotion that pops up is peace, it's calm, it's nostalgia. It sends a message down to the body. That chemical reaction sends alerts to your body to say, let the heartbeat slow down. Let's change the breathing to be slower. Let's create a different response. We can actually take away all the energy from like the normal processes and send them into healing. So we can let our body start to restore during this moment because there's nothing that needs attention. Once that physical reaction happens, then the last piece is that the body will send a message back to the brain to be like, it's good. We like this. So it'll send a chemical reaction back through what's called the enteric nervous system. This is your gut reaction. This is what people talk about all the time. Your gut, your stomach has chemicals moving around within it that will send a message back up to the brain in the form of a thought, and it'll close out the loop. So it's your senses, it's your emotions, it's your physical reactions, and it's your thoughts. That's how memories are formed. And every second of every day of your life, and even before when you were in the womb, you've been having this happen. But in the first handful of years of your life, really between like before you're born to age 7, your brain doesn't have much going on in it. It is constantly learning. So it is hunting for experiences. It's trying to pull as much in as humanly possible. So everything that happens to you in that first pre-birth to 7 phase is more important than anything else that will happen to you for the rest of your life, because it's pulling all that stuff up and it is firing off new neural pathways within the brain. It's creating a vast highway system so that the next time you experience something, your brain doesn't have to go, what emotions should we have tied to this? It goes, what did we do last time? And it'll just jumpstart the system. So you start to get subconscious feedback loops. So your brain creates a system based on those 4 parts so that it goes, we've done this before. Let's do it again. We've done this before. Let's do it again. We've done this before. Let's do it again. We've never experienced that. Tell her not to do it. Send out the warning signals. We don't have space in the brain for more, or we don't want to learn more. So the first 7 years are critical. And if you believe in past lives like I do, I think we pull a lot of stuff from our past lives too, that we forget by the time we're around age 5. So we're also pulling in some baggage from our past. And we have some ancestral stuff that literally lives in our DNA, and the field of epigenetics can prove all that too. So we're bringing in some stuff from our families as well. So a DNA response will happen based on what your mom did, based on what your grandma did. It's really more of the maternal line than anywhere else because we're actually carrying that DNA with us. And the whole field of epigenetics has shown that like anxious moms, anxious grandma, anxious child is going to happen because the DNA is activated. So that's the very elongated version of how this happens. So when you're doing shadow work and something comes up for you, like let's say you're doing it on your own, you YouTube a video and you're like, I'm going to do my shadow work, and some shit comes up and your whole body is like, like this is real, this is happening. You have to know that you can interrupt that feedback loop. You can change it. So you need to know the 4 parts: the senses, the emotions, the physical reactions, and the thoughts. Pick one. It doesn't matter which one, but if you can change one of those 4, you are literally severing a system that your brain has created for you, and that'll break down a neural pathway. So if you've ever heard anybody say it takes like 21 days to break a habit, you don't even have to remember things that are unconscious to do this, because you can just choose something else over and over again. And when you make a different choice or you have a different thought, then you're severing an old neural pathway. And after 21 days, the brain kind of fizzles it out. It's like, fine, we'll let it go. Shadow work is just faster because when you know the origin, it's easier to interrupt. Does that make sense? I just vomited all over you.
No, I love it. I love it. Like, you're beautiful at articulating these concepts. They're not easy concepts to express.
Well, that was why I wrote the book. I wanted to make it so that all the information was in one place and you didn't have to go searching. You didn't have to like read 1,000 different articles or like look through textbooks, ask your therapist 50 times. It's all in one spot. So you don't have to worry about it.
But can you hold it up again for me? I want to see it again.
Yes, I can.
Yes,
so everything is in here. And actually, while I have this up,
right?
It's baby. It's the baby version. The shadow work
exciting. Deck. So when does the deck come out?
Next week, August 5th, or I guess when people are listening to this, it should be available because August 5th is the actual release date.
So cool. And where is it available?
Everywhere. So Barnes and Nobles, Target, some anthropologies will carry it, Walmart, anywhere that you can buy books. And a lot of your local witchy shops carry it. I always get tagged in posts from random places, especially around like shadow work season, which is like September to December, where it's like displays in the front of the store and the books up there. So that's how
I should connect you with Jackie from Prana House. I don't know if you guys are connected at all, but
we aren't.
Yeah, she would absolutely. She would love your work. So yeah,
amazing.
That is so exciting. So with the shadow work deck, and I gotta remember to go back because I have other questions for you or other thoughts. You were talking about past lives, so I'll come back to that. But I'm curious about with your deck. So how does it work?
Yeah. So the shadow work deck is meant to be like the beginning phase for people, where it's like you're dipping your toes into shadow work. You haven't done it all yet. Or if you have done the deeper stuff, just to kind of keep yourself regulated all the time. The deck itself, when you open up the box, has your typical guidebook in it that everybody always has with, every card has the guidebook saying prompt understandings that you know exactly what it is that you're pulling. But something that we did different that the publishing house is super excited about is actually put a workbook in here too. So that it's not like everybody was obsessed with that shadow work journal that came out a year or two ago. And I was so grateful that came out because my book sales skyrocketed. So thank you so much to that author. But there's no explanation of what to do and why it matters in there, which is how I think people were finding the book. So the workbook is for anybody who's looking to like take it another.
I'm super excited to announce a new sponsor for the podcast. The new sponsor is Bowhead, and Bowhead is a lot of apparel, but also prints and stickers, even skateboards. Born off the coast of California, Bowhead brings you art-forward apparel and, like I said, prints and stickers. I love the stickers. It's all inspired by Mother Nature, inspired by surf and skate and tattoo culture. The designs are so cool. They just make me want to move to Santa Cruz immediately. And I love the tagline that Bowhead has, that not everything has to make sense, because I agree. Not everything does make sense. So I think in a world where everyone's wearing the same mass-produced graphics from chain stores, I think it's really cool to get something original, designed by a real human, designed by a small business, a small artist shop. It's one of my favorite ways to support art in our culture, in our world, is to get something from somebody who actually made it and put all that work in, got their web store together, makes the designs, puts it out there. I know from running my old business, Haute Couture, it takes a ton of work, and any way that I can support artists like that, I will continue to do that. So Bowhead, if you want to check it out, you go to bowhead.art and use code THOUGHT15 for 15% off your order. Thought is in all capitals. So I hope you enjoy it, and please help me welcome our new sponsor.
Their step and have some guided prompts to take you through. This book is full of stuff I did with my therapy clients. So for any specific thing that you have, whether it's an ancestral trauma, behavior that you need to let go of, they're all in here. And you can do them with or without the cards, but they're each tied to a specific card. So if you pull one, you could use it for that. And then otherwise, it's like a normal Oracle deck where you got your cards. I give you in the guidebook some example ways that you can pull them, but you could just pull one and see what feels right at any given point. So one that I just pulled now that we'll say is for the people who are listening to this is the safety card, which I love. We had an amazing artist do all the artwork for it. So this says create boundaries and healing opportunities, which I feel like is such a big theme right now. We all need boundaries, and we all need to feel good about holding to those boundaries, because the people in our life who benefit from us not having them, they get kind of pissed off when we make them.
I know. And I think that first of all, that is beautiful. I love that so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Really beautiful work. And I know I think Oracle decks were definitely one of my big gateways, and actually brings me back to the past lives things. One of my big gateways, a lot of this many, many years ago, back when Doreen Virtue was still doing Oracle cards, and 20 some years ago or something like that, my sister was gifted a Oracle deck by somebody, and we were like, is this? It was like this, imagine, it was like fairies and angels.
Yes.
We're like, oh my God. But I find them to be so helpful in the sense that, I still have, I have my Windows window sill is filled with all of my, cards, and well, some of them, the rest of them, the ones that can fit. But I find them so helpful in the sense of, when we're redirecting our thoughts. Like for me, a big part of my journey was just to give myself a different way to think about something, because I even like way back in the day when I started things, I knew that the natural thoughts that were coming up in my head were not helpful. And I was like, all right, how else can I think about this? Give me another way to reframe this so that I'm not stuck in a cycle. And so I just think that they're so wonderful. They're so powerful, especially when you really sit and just go, tell me what I need to know, which is usually my prompt is, tell me what I need to know right now.
Me too.
Yeah.
What is it I need to know right now?
Right. Yeah. I find that to be really helpful. Sometimes if I'm doing tarot, I'll do it like, a 3-card pull to kind of tell me a little story to kind of interpret it that way. I think with tarot, it's like a little bit, or tarot, however, it's a little bit more useful when you do it that way, because there is kind of a story arc going through. But with oracle cards, I feel it to be just one of the best ways to quickly cut to the chase of, what do I need to know right now? How can I think about this differently? Who can I call on? What energy within myself and the trees and, the angels?
Yes.
And all that. Like, how can I reframe this and shift things? So I'll definitely be getting your deck. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm excited to hear what you think. I feel like in the beginning, you don't really know where to start. So it's like, you're listening to podcasts, you're following people on Instagram, but you don't know what to do. And I feel like oracle decks are such an easy way to kind of go, here's some direction. Here's like a pathway to take. And that's why I've always loved them. And when the original book came out back in 2022, I immediately pitched them the oracle deck. And, it's a business. So they're like, let's see how the book does. And like, let's give it time. And then I just sort of forgot about it because I was working on other things. I just got this feeling about a year ago where I was like, it's time. We're going to do the deck now. And they said yes. And they let me go a little bit more with the art that I like. I don't know if you could tell. I'm kind of like a black and white sort of girly, but I also like shiny things. I love shiny things. So they took inspiration from the book, and then they let me kind of run with the rest, which was nice. And they found this incredible artist on Instagram who does this deep, beautiful work. And I'm excited for everybody to get their hands on it and see what everybody feels.
Well, like you said, I think it's a really good place to start, because especially you've got the workbook with it. And especially, when you're starting and just being brave enough to take a look at what's going on, if you find yourself having like a why me kind of feeling over and over again, I think that's usually a good invitation to go, okay, I need to look at things a little differently. This is my invitation to just try to have a different thought about it, try to have a different approach, consider other possibilities. And something like that is so important, because it definitely takes some courage to look within, but it also takes even more courage to keep living the shitty patterns you've been living. So, it's like, sometimes it helps to go like, well, both paths are going to be a little rough. So let me just choose one that actually will get me out of the woods, as opposed to just keep me in this, boulder field of woods and things that are, I'm saying woods, but
But kind of, I used to say something very similar to my therapy clients, where they would go off on all the reasons why they shouldn't change. I'd be like, okay, great, we're going to stay where we are. And then get mad at me. Like, why aren't you fighting me to do anything different? I'd say it takes just as much effort to stay where you are as it does to move. I'm going to do whatever you want to do. So just tell me where we're going. I'm here.
Yeah. You're like, that's fine. Yeah. So it was
you do what you want to do.
Well, and I think that's really important, because it really, that means you're a good therapist, right? Like you're allowing them to just move at their own pace, right? And set the tone for that, which is, I give you a lot of credit for, because I know
not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. Not easy. Yeah. Especially learning that just like in a personal context. I'm like, all right, you do you. I am just here to be a good vibe. And you let me know some extra input. And, but you were saying about the past lives, and I was thinking about, you have probably familiar with Brian Weiss and Many Lives, Many Masters.
He was my gateway drug back when I was a teenager. Yeah.
Same. So I wanted to share that with you, because I think you'll appreciate this. So my dad, and we can talk about, like I was saying, I was raised Catholic, and like on my mom's side, and granted, she was in medical school, so we really didn't go to church that often, which every time she was not, she was like, we're going to church, and we'd be like, oh, and I went to Catholic school though. So it was like, very much a presence, and we can come back to that. But my dad was raised, I think, Protestant, and he was always, I had an existential crisis at 4 years old or so about, I think it was after he showed us Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones. I'm pretty sure I was
Great movie.
5.
I got my dad showing that movie way too young. I have a vivid memory of the dude holding the heart as it was beating, and that will never get out of my head.
Yes, that's exactly. So, and I teased him later when I was older. I was like, excuse, because he was like, Mr. Mom. I was like, did you just want to see Indiana Jones? And you were like, they'll be fine. And he just started laughing. I was like, cool. Yes. I have trauma from that still. And I mean, I love, I don't watch Temple of Doom usually because it does still upset me, but we just watched all the other Indiana Joneses recently. But
it might be good shadow work to watch it and calm your body while you do it.
I know. I probably should. I did it.
While you breathe slowly, you meditate your way through those scenes. You change how your body reminds itself of it, and you interrupt that subconscious feedback loop. Boom. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I'll tell my man. I'll be like, listen, we're going to do some shadow work. He'll be like, all right, let's go, babe.
Let's go.
So my dad, so I guess 2 stories with it. We watched that, and then I remember going to bed, and I had the most, I had a legit existential crisis as a child, like as a little one, going, oh my God, one day I'm going to die. And what does that mean? And I remember looking at my headboard, and it was, I might as well have taken like a bunch of mushrooms or something as a 4-year-old. I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Although I would have felt happier, but I was terrified. And I ran downstairs and I was like, Dad, when am I going to die? And I loved his, granted, I still have these, oh my God, I'm going to die in the middle of the night things that happen ever since then. Like just a very visceral thing that I will need to do my shadow work with Temple of Doom.
There's a neural pathway tied to that.
Oh my God. Yeah. I need to, because it's not something that I'm as in my waking, it's really only when I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like,
well, those are the circumstances, the sensory pieces of it, the emotions, the physical, like literally physically touching your bed, like all those pieces put together creates the scenario that you were in when you were 4.
Wow.
Interrupted, and you change it for good.
All right, I'm going to work on that because it's not my favorite thing that happens. So my dad, I went down, I talked to him, and he gave me, he's like probably feeling bad that first of all, he traumatized his child and that what to say to that, right? Like that we're all going to die. And then he went through every religion that he could like think of, basically, and every faith that he could think of. And he gave me examples of what everybody says. He's like, well, some people, he was like, and I remember he told me about how with the Hindus, it's like the highest evolution is you become a cow. And I was like, perfect. I love that. I would love to become a cow. I was like, that
sounds great.
That sounds like a good plan. Thank you. I feel a little bit better. And so that's kind of, he thinks outside the box in that way. And cut to when we were teenagers and in high school. And Allie and I, who've always just been interested in, everything mystical, found there was a book on the table, and it was Many Lives, Many Masters. And we're like, what is this? And we're like, this is Dad's book. This is so cool. So we read it. We were, all in after that, because talking about the regressions and how his client just does these regressions and then ends up back in a totally different life. Heals that
a farm in the 1600s.
Yeah.
Nowhere is a small boy, even though it's a woman.
Yeah. Like it was and then she would just have these memories, and then he would work her through it. And then she would be a little bit more healed and a little bit more healed. And it was absolutely fascinating. Sorry, keys. I don't know if he wants to get out.
I told you they love shadow work. They're listening.
I know.
Going, yes.
Lives.
Tell us about your past lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're right, bud. So we really just like started on a journey then, I love his meditation for sleep for me, actually, even though it's past life regression. I love his like walk through to relax the body. That was like when I used to have really a lot of sleep issues, especially during Lyme disease, heavy concentration. I would listen to that because it was really good at just kind of like walking through.
Yeah.
So it turns out, we thought this whole time that it was my dad's book. We actually don't know where it came from. So
really?
Yeah, we talked to my dad about it a couple years ago, and he was like, no, he's like, one night he's like, I don't know, you girls were out and Mom was working, and it was like storming or something, like it was a spooky night. And he goes, this book was on the table. I don't know where it came from. And I thought it was your guys' book. So he thought it was our book. We thought it was his book. We have no idea.
Ooh, I got goosebumps.
So for
That's
all of
very
us, it
cool.
really just like set a path for our own journeys in that sense. And for anybody who's listening, it's Many Lives, Many Masters is, I think, his first book, but it's
Yes, by Dr. Brian Weiss.
Brian Weiss. Yeah, he's just awesome. I just still love his work. I find his voice to be incredibly soothing for sleep, at least. So as well. Well,
I also
yeah.
find a lot of therapists have kind of gone along the same pathway. So now that I'm becoming known for the book Shadow Work, I still go to psychotherapy conferences. I need to get my continuing ed credit so I can still be a licensed psychotherapist. And when I'm there, everybody gets me because they're like, Danielle, I did a witchy thing. And I'm like, okay, like, come on, let's go talk. And it usually starts with, I was doing an EMDR session with someone. I was doing parts work. I was doing hypnotherapy because you can be certified to be a hypnotherapist. And when I was doing it, I accidentally brought someone to a past life. And it happens all the time because once that door to the unconscious mind is open, everything is in there. And whatever needs to come up to the surface, it's ripe for the taking. So it's like, choose what you want. It's right there. And whatever is the most healing for you in that moment is what the brain's going to show you. So if it's something from a past life, that will be what you experience. It's right there. Our brains don't forget anything. Every license plate you've ever seen that you just walked past, looked at, and looked away, it's stored in there somewhere. We just don't need to recall all that information all the time. So we have working memory stores. So that short-term memory that you have, the information that you're pulling from regularly, that's what you're thinking about. And the rest gets dumped into the unconscious mind. And it can feel like it's overflowing, but it's there.
Wow. That's super, super interesting. I love hearing that actually happens regularly because that's not something most people would know, right? Like,
no. And all the therapists who have been trained, or it's like, I went to Columbia for like, and this happened and I don't know what to think because I'm devout in my religion, or like, I don't believe in this stuff. Yet it was so clear and it came through and it helped that client massively. And so we use what our clients give us. We're not here to convince them what they saw wasn't real. We're here to help them take what they learned about themselves and to alchemize it and do something with it. So I think we're going to see even more therapists dipping their toes into those waters and maybe even making it into something that feels more legitimized, because I know Dr. Brian Weiss in the beginning was fighting tooth and nail to try and make it into something that people didn't laugh at him for. But it's legitimate. That book has changed so many people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And just that work in general. And I think you brought up something that we were kind of touching on before, which I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on. I guess the witch wound is probably a way to sort of go about that. I think I was sharing with you that, being raised Catholic and doing all the shadow work, I think for me, I think Maynard's about to start playing and making, you getting in your box?
Kitties.
Getting in a box. Were you getting in the box? Nope.
Hi, kitties.
You want to come up here? All right. Do you want to get out? All right. Let me let him out. He's actually behaving like really well at her interview, which is nice. So I was raised Catholic, but obviously always had, again, we were very exposed also to just like the mystical things. Like Allie was obsessed with Egypt growing up, and her name actually is Alexandria, which they named her after the library, which I always thought was really cool.
That is interesting.
Yeah, like we had like this like hieroglyphic stamp set thing, and of course I was the baby sister, so I was always like tagging along, like, what are you doing? But like ghost hunting and just anything that could be like mystical and magical is very much my sister very much like held that torch for us in that sense, right? I being raised Catholic was the thing that stuck with me, honestly, from the beginning. Was I was so upset that I was told that just by being born, I had sinned and I'd done something wrong. And as somebody who hated doing something wrong, I was like, I didn't mean to do something wrong.
I'm just here.
I thought I was just here. Yeah. So I would feel so bad about the fact that I was a sinner and did something wrong just from the jump. Like I remember being very little and just having that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And so that really saying as I was doing the shadow work and living out here in Colorado Springs, it is incredibly Christian here and in a different way. It's been very,
it's like a hippie Christian way, because my best friend is from Colorado Springs.
Oh, really?
Every time I go out there, we always hike the Manitou Incline. We hang out with everybody. And it is like hippie dippy. Kind of. Even though it's Christian.
Yeah. And it's funny being from the East Coast, like I know most everybody of our community here is very Christian in a way that if it was an East Coast vibe, and, I love you all, whatever. I don't have any, it's just the way that it was for me. And like my grandmother's like very not, God doesn't seem pleased in her eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a different vibe where you're like, oh my God. And out here, God's
love, man.
So like you do you, I support, Jesus, and it's all this vibe that is so positive that I'm so happy that is the vibe here. Everyone is so loving and supportive and nice and encouraging and has a really uplifted way of thinking about things through challenges. I've seen people go through plenty of very hard challenges and have this buoyant faith that I really love. And I think it's been healing in the sense of growing up around such a different vibe of like go and, I went to an all-girls school and then we had to do confession with some random priest dude in some weird room to be like, I'm like, I don't know you. I don't want to talk to you about myself. And, like, what have you done wrong? I'm like, I don't know, God.
Yeah.
Talk to you. Just a very different vibe. And so I think it's been, and I do have a hard time talking about my beliefs out here even still, because the word, like I say witch in a way where it's like, it's any person or woman who's like not following convention is kind of how, like we're just sort of doing our own thing.
That's appropriate. That fits.
Yeah. Like that's kind of how, and I kind of, especially East Coast, felt really aligned with that, especially because of the vibe of like what I grew up with. I was like, I'm doing me. I have a very deep spiritual journey that is my own. And that's what works for me. It's, I'm very slow to talk about it out here because, for me, it's really, nature is my church. And it's a very, if I was going to say I was anything, I'm probably Dallas, honestly, like I'm like, whatever the vibe of the Wu Wei and the nature and that resonates mostly with me. It's just an interesting thing. I think I'm curious about, because I feel like that witch wound shows up past lives, ancestral, culturally in so many ways. And I don't know. I'm curious how you see that come up with your client work. Yeah,
totally. I think I had an unconventional childhood. That my mom is Jewish and she grew up in a very Jewish community in Queens, New York, and was at synagogue all the time. My dad is from the Bronx and he is super, super, super Roman Catholic. And that's the family that he grew up in. And it was like wildly different. And the one piece of the puzzle that makes this really fun is that my grandmother was a spiritual healer. So my Italian grandmother, who was like super devout Roman Catholic, was doing energy healings on people and dealing with past lives and all this stuff in the Bronx in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so, my dad,
we have very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of gives you another perspective and it changed the way that he saw things too, but it actually made him afraid of it because he was going to an all boys Catholic school in the Bronx at a time where the nuns were running the show. And he has so many memories of like physical trauma. Like, I think he said he was 7 years old, like maybe 6 years old, and was asked to go up to the board to like write a letter in cursive. He did it wrong. And the nun came up behind him, took the back of his head and slammed it into the blackboard and actually caused him to bleed. So it was like a different world. So when it came time for my parents to have kids and like religion's one of the things you talk about, they fought like crazy over which one was going to win out. But ultimately my mom kind of like threw that stuff in my dad's face and was like, do you really want our kids involved in like such a hateful religion? Because Judaism's not very hateful. It's like, kind of like, we all love each other and like things are going to work out and everything's fine. So they like kind of went back and forth about it. I ended up being raised as nothing, which gave me sort of no footing and grounding. And as that Capricorn who likes information, it made me want to learn them all. So I read every book I could find. I read history books. I read everything. When I was old enough, I took courses. In college, I took a bunch of theology courses, even though it had nothing to do with my coursework. All my extracurriculars were theology, which is weird.
Same. I actually took, a world religions. Like, I was like, tell me
I wanted
everything.
to know. Yeah, I wanted to know. And it always came down to, for me, history is a story told by the victor. It is a one-sided story. So I wanted as much information as I could get from every different angle to try and get some semblance of almost a half of a truth, because we never know. And in doing all that, and then also seeing a lot of people's past lives, because I've been doing shadow work one-on-one with clients for over a decade, I've gotten to see so many different glimpses of things that also, like, I'll do a session with you. I'll see a moment from like 1400 Alexandria library, like whatever it is. And then it's like, you see something else and you're like, okay, like I'm trying to put pieces of a puzzle together, because there's some things that are repeating and showing up over and over, and other things that I might have learned in a book that are not showing up, and I'm not seeing those things. And for me, religion, not all religions, but a lot of religions come down to educated groups of people needing to control uneducated groups of people. Mm-hmm. And the easiest way to control an uneducated, impoverished group of people is to make them afraid. So if you can impose rules, if you can make people feel bad, if you can state things in languages they don't understand, and if you can do it in such a way where there's ritualistic pieces of it, where it's like you stand at this point, you sit at this point, you dump this, you have to go to confession here. It makes it so that everybody knows the rules and everybody's afraid to break them, which I would see time and time again with my therapy clients when I first started working as a therapist in Philadelphia, because it is such a Catholic, Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic kind of city.
Yeah.
And religious trauma was a big part of it. And it's unfortunate, but I also think that our traumas can define us. They can knock us down, or they can be opportunities for us to take a step back and go, what is the bigger picture here? And what can I learn from these things? And how can I grow? And that's an opportunity for us to do something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I've actually been listening to the great courses on the Gnostic texts recently, because I was just like fascinated. But I like to read. I'm like, tell me everything. Tell me what everybody believed. I would like to know.
I want to know them all.
Yeah. I find it super interesting. And like you said, like it's the story told by the victor and everything. And I think also when I was a teenager, so I was obsessed with saints. Like I found them just fascinating. And I had two really crazy, like one was at a cathedral in Spain where I was like, I felt, I don't know, the universe. It was that moment where you're like, holy shit. Like, I was just walking around and it was obscenely beautiful. Like it was stained glass. The sun was coming in. I mean, it was just like straight out of a movie. And I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling God, And then the second,
I love those moments.
Yeah. And then the second time was like a few months later. And I think I was like 13 or so, 14. And I was just in the passenger seat driving. My dad was driving and I was just looking out the window, and it was nighttime. So I was looking up at the sky, but it hit me again. And I was like, whoa, because I thought it had to do with the church. And then it was like, I went and I was just sitting in the car and I was like, holy shit, here it is again. And I was like, oh, there's like more. There's more. It's more,
Yeah. Weird specks of dust in the grand scheme of things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I think I always have, my man and I always are talking about just the philosophical concepts of all of this, because ultimately, like, I think that the core teachings of like Jesus and, like the teachings that you get in most of the religions are shared, ways to show up for each other and show up for the community and spirit. And it's grounded in a very beautiful place that hasn't then been corrupted by organizations of humans trying to, like you said,
people trying to control it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I just find it really interesting. I wanted to hear your thoughts on it, especially when it comes to, like as people are unpeeling that layer. And, I think for women, we see a lot that it's this reclamation of being unapologetic in a way that I think when I first started hearing about people being unapologetic, it was kind of where we started our conversation. It was like loud and big and I'm unapologetic and like, look at me, I did it, this like demonstration of that.
But that's
And
acting. It's
exactly.
not real.
Yeah, it's not real. It's and maybe some days it feels like that. And maybe there are times that call for that, but I think our unapologetic nature and the reclamation of our power is more nuanced, where it shows up in our, interactions and kind of day-to-day choices of, and I think authenticity has been used so much. It's a great word. It's just been used to death, but
Yeah.
it's hard to find we have to find new words to explain these things to get our.
Let's make one up.
Yeah. Right. Like, what's the align? I don't know. Yeah. Like,
We'll think about it. We'll get back to you guys.
Yeah.
We're going to make a word.
We'll find a new word. Yeah, exactly. This, truth, alignment, authenticity feeling in the moments, right? Like being, knowing that you can say and feel and do what you want without having an overlord kind of judging you and telling you, correcting you constantly.
Yes.
And I think I feel like that's a really shared experience. And I do feel like the generation that's coming after us seems to be better about it. Like a lot of the girls that I train with who are in their 20s seem to have a much better sense of themselves in that particular way, which just, oh God, it brings me so much peace to see. They seem to feel more comfortable in their bodies and with their choices.
1,000%. I see it all the time. My daughter had an experience yesterday that she told me about that I took a step back and was like, crushing this parenting thing. Our generation is doing better for the generations that come after us. But I think so much of that, as we were talking about the witch wounds and hinting at this idea that things are about control and power and how to keep certain groups down, the awareness of that and what social media has done for us in the past 10 years is make it so that voices that haven't been heard historically are getting heard loud and clear. And there's still people who are upset about that, but there are also a lot of people who are working to counterbalance that. And I think a lot of that has to do with men who are stepping up and kind of going, no, this isn't the way that it has to be. It can be a different way. And that is extremely healing.
Yeah, I think there's been, I always have felt that, when it was the rise of the feminine, it's both we can't have, it's balance. You can't do one without the other.
It's not stepping on the necks of the masculine. It's about the balance. It's about everybody having space. And it doesn't even have to be a gendered thing. It can be a race thing. It can be a cultural thing. It can be an education-based thing or an income-based thing. The more we're all on the same level and the more we all have the space to just show up in a way that's not I have to be loud and I have to be here and I'm going to step on your neck to get there.
Right.
The more it's just a soft ability to rise, the better off we all are.
Yeah, allowing people to just be who they are, and even just how you want to live your life in any kind of, that can be taken in any kind of context, obviously without harming people and all those things. But there's, like you said, I think in our culture, it's so much about, especially when it comes to our social media and media in general, which we're inundated with all the time. And everyone's become a TikTok, whatever. And I realized the other day, I was I don't want to go viral. I want to have just a nice pocket of people to talk to. I was anytime anything gets virally, it gets, I'm what is this, please? I was that's not my favorite vibe. So, and that is one of those things, right? Not everybody wants that, needs that, whatever, in even just the way that we show up and live our lives. There's so much healing in that. And I think, I see such a beautiful shift in the masculine as well. And granted, I spend most of my time outside of here, either in the woods or at a martial arts MMA gym. So it's definitely the most everyone's fighting. But it's
that's sacred rage. It's not fighting just to get into it.
The nicest, most friendly, wonderful, supportive people. The people that are at my gym truly have become family, and they're just, even just to the fact of having Lyme disease, and sometimes I don't feel very well going in, and it was something that I felt really awkward about when it first happened, because I'm normally, I feel so much better now, but there are days where it gets me where I'm a just totally different person, and sometimes I don't know that it's going to happen until I get to the gym to go do a thing, and somebody might just like touch me. I'm like, oh, I don't want anyone. That hurts. That even just like, hi, I'm like, I was like, I didn't realize that I felt like this. I probably should go home. And it was wonderful the first time it happened that I didn't feel like judged or odd or examined in some kind of way. Everyone just kind of, it was like if I needed something, somebody's like, you good? And I'd be like, yeah. Like, do you need something? But then nobody was like in my business in a way that for me just feels so terribly embarrassing. And, granted, I can leave as well, but then that even felt even more embarrassing. Sometimes you show up and then you're like, I gotta go. But it's taught me a lot in that sense, the way that that community shows up and is supportive. Everybody's working on something that's very personal, but also there's a group vibe. And it's been really interesting in just kind of how to show up in other areas as well. I've never really seen it up close, this particular kind of community. And it's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I hear that from a lot of people. My husband has done some like BJJ in the past and felt that way at his gym. And I have some clients that I work with through my programs who are a part of BJJ communities, one in Canada, one out in, I think she's in California. And everybody talks about how loving and warm the community is. And something that is typically deemed so masculine is really a space for people to fight and use aggression in a way that is healing and warm, and then just being there for each other to create this family essence. It's powerful. It's a huge shift.
Yeah. It is a huge shift. I definitely think specifically jiu-jitsu in the sense that it's like there's for sure a bunch of schools that I've heard that are not the most safe places, but of course
we're always going to find things like that no matter where we go.
Yeah, exactly. And for the most part, I think the fact that more women are doing jiu-jitsu too, there's just, it's like it's ultimately like for me, I came from a self-defense background. So for me, jiu-jitsu is more playful. Mm-hmm. And it's fun in that sense because you're all just like suffering together in a lot of ways. You spend your first 2 years of jiu-jitsu usually just underneath somebody being like, how do I get out? And that's a spiritual journey in itself. Plus you're basically learning a physical language. And it's beautiful because you're just kind of, I actually jokingly, but not jokingly, will be like namaste to people after a roll a lot because it is like, I get what you're going. I get that this is tough. I understand that you feel like I know I've been there where you're just like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know how to get out from this thing. I thought I remembered all of these things. And when it taught me so much about how to learn too, because you just show up and talk about like rewriting pathways. You just allow yourself to absorb as much as you can. I always suggest to my students to have micro wins. So for instance, like grip placement and where your foot is, like little things. I remembered to grab this specific area on their wrists today. Yay, I did it. And that's just leave it at that. So it's that in that sense, I really love, I think it's doing a lot of healing work. I do think that there's, as it gets bigger, some shenanigans just creep in, but
of course, I think we could say that about anything, but to tie this back into everything else that we've talked about, I think this day and age and the work that we're doing now and what we're seeing in 2025 is people finding their own way to healing, no matter where they are. Mm-hmm. And that is their religion in some ways. Like, forget about all the ones that people have taught us. If you're finding ways to let go, to trust in something bigger, to let yourself grow through painful circumstances, then you're doing the work. And that's really cool.
That's so beautiful. You just put that so beautifully. I wanted to just read this little quote that you have on your website that I love so much. Is, don't be afraid of your shadow, be inspired by it, because within the darkest corners of your soul, you find yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's from my book. This is like so narcissistic of me, but I'm going to say it. When I wrote that, I was so excited. I was like, I cannot believe that came out of my brain because that was good.
Yeah, I was like, that was beautiful. I would talk about a lot with Hakator because I always would have this podcast voice coming out, but it wasn't for it. But I would always talk about your dark and your light are both as sacred. You need both,
You need both. It's all about the balance. And sometimes when you kind of like let go and you fully channel and you let things come through for you, you find the balance, you find the words, you find the healing, and everything just clicks.
So beautiful. So if people want to work with you and connect more with you, can you tell us more about that?
Yep. So if you want to dip your toes in, you're not ready to do anything more than that, that's totally cool. Get the shadow work deck. That is going to be available by the time this podcast comes out at wherever books are sold. You can get it on Barnes & Noble's website, on Amazon. It's just literally called the Shadow Work Deck. And then if you want something a little bit deeper and you want to learn the behind the scenes, if you like geeking out a little bit and the whole conversation that we had on the brain and the body and how they all work together, and you want to try shadow work yourself, I explained it all in my book. It's called Shadow Work, also by Danielle Massi, and you can get that in all the same places. Almost every Barnes & Noble carries them in store. And then if you wanted to work directly with me, find me on social media. I am Danielle Massi across all my platforms. I'm everywhere.
Wonderful. And I'll link everything as well and all the show notes and everything.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and your insights. Absolutely beautiful. It was a joy to talk to you.
Same here. This was fun.